Real Talk, Indiana's premier talk show on real estate investing, where we talk each week about investing your money right here in Central Indiana. The tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts, brought to you by CIREIA, Central Indiana's oldest and largest real estate investing association. Hello there, my name is Vicki Perry, and I'm the Executive Director of CIREIA. We have over 600 members, all active in or learning how to be active in real estate here in the Indiana market. This radio show is available on FM 95.9, AM 950, podcast on YouTube, and www.cireia.org. Join us each week as we talk about how you can make your money more active with better returns and help the community that you live in with real estate done the right way. Now, on with the show.
Hello, my name is Ron Watson, and I'm the board president for CIREIA, Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association. And joining me today as my co-host is one of the most successful local investors in real estate and a leader in this industry, Brett Snodgrass. Brett is a broker, investor, and owner of Simple Wholesaling. Welcome, Brett.
Thanks, Ron. So excited to be here. Been looking forward to this show for many months now, and just excited to spend some time with you, Ron. I know we got to know each other a little bit over the past year, and I am going to introduce our other co-host who's going to be with us on this radio show, but we're actually going to put him in the hot seat today, and that is Mr. Dave Short, who is one of the most successful flipper and real estate investors in Indianapolis, and he's investing millions of dollars each year into rehabs and whatnot. So, Dave, what's going on?
Well, we're pretty busy right now, and like you, I've been looking forward to this show for quite a while, actually quite a few years. So this is a new venture for me, and hope it goes well.
So Dave, let's start with a little bit of background about you. Give us a little bit of your experience, and how did you end up being one of the most sought-after rehabbers in Central Indiana?
Well, I'm not sure about that. It doesn't mean if I do a lot of flips, I'm the most sought-after, but
I think it's because you're so handsome, too.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. It's what my wife tells me almost every day. So... But I've actually been in the real estate business for 44 years, and in the past 5 years, I've spent almost all of my time flipping property in Central Indiana, and it's my passion today. It's my wife's passion. I've brought my sons to help me in to do some of this business, and we've been fairly successful, and it's something that we're involved in every day. So when you're talking to us, you're talking to somebody that's actually doing the business every day. The last 5 years, we've flipped around 150 houses here in Indianapolis, and it's part of the fun with the radio show. We're able to share some of our strategies that we do with this type of business.
That's awesome, Dave. Hey, just real quick, I want to, you said that you've been in this business for 44 years. Is that right?
That's right.
Wow, that's actually older than me. But tell us your backstory. So how did you get into real estate investing? Have you had any hurdles along the way? I really want to take the audience and get to know you a little bit. And obviously you're well known around Indianapolis. You're one of the most successful real estate investors, but that doesn't come with bumps and bruises along the way. So I'd really like to just take us into your story. How did you get involved? Did you do anything before you started flipping houses? Just so the audience can get to know you a little bit.
Well, I was a real estate broker for all the 44 years, and I had a real estate team where we just brokered single-family homes in Indianapolis. And through that period, we've always had one or two flips, or we're problem solvers. And that's what flippers do. We solve problems, and we're very good at that, and have been very successful in solving other people's problems and in selling these houses. So, my story goes back. I reinvent, and I tell all the students and all the people we talk to through CIREIA, is find your niche in do what you do best, something that suits your personality. And I would get bored every 5 or 6 years trying to do something, so I would try to reinvent myself in the real estate business. And we've just evolved. I've owned a rental portfolio that was very large. When the crash hit, we had our bumps and bruises too. and everything's not fun and easy about this this flipping gig, or a lot of the people think it is.
Hey, so Dave, I got a couple questions for you. I know this is our first show, and I know a lot of people out there probably listening and wondering, how do I get started in this process? And you're down the road a little bit. You mentioned 44 years, so you've got quite a bit of experience. Some people may be sitting there thinking, I'd like to do that, but I don't think I'm quite ready to do 150 houses a year. So we want to give people kind of the basics and give them the ability to ramp up, takes baby steps maybe if they want to get started in this process. So let's say you're watching TV and you see some of these flipping shows and you think that's really how it is. Can you give the listeners some idea of really maybe where, if you're starting from scratch and you want to try to do your first deal, where would you begin and how would that process start?
Well, we're very consistent with what we tell the people. It's like you have to get involved with the education. This is some of the things that CIREIA and why I'm so active and affiliated with this organization. The business of the people wanting to get in, we call them newbies. And they're just like lost ball in high weeds when they come to us and first come to CIREIA. And the beauty about our organization is that you can get there and you can almost get all the questions answered that you need. You get all the education that you need. But it's just starting and taking the first step. We get so many people in our business that they get paralyzed when they get close to doing their first transaction. And to take that step, the first step's the education and getting involved in seeing that it's not. I get so many calls, and I know Brett does too, about mentoring and this kind of thing. And it's because they don't know where to start. They just think, that's the first place to start.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I always relate it back to people go to school to be, a lawyer, a doctor, or any type of professional. And then this is a profession. We are professional real estate investors. And that's one of the reasons why we're putting on this show, is to teach people really how to invest into real estate the correct way, the right way, which is obviously, what the show is called. So Dave, you talked about, would you consider the first step would be going to a networking event like CIREIA and getting to know some of the people there and getting to know people like yourself or myself? And then what are some other things that people can do to get some of the education that they need to get well equipped to kind of take that first step? Do you have any other resources?
Well, there's so much education out there today, and you can get a lot of education for free. You can go to some of the seminars, and you can literally spend anywhere from $5,000 to $40,000 to get educated. And I've talked to a lot of people that spent $40,000 that think that, man, we really got a good bargain in doing this, where we got other people and say, hey, I wish I'd have came to your networking meeting because I'm learning the same kinds of things without the expense of getting involved in it. There's, they're not competitors, but Bigger Pockets, for instance. You can get so much education in that forum. There's, right now they just did their 264th podcast, and they're all free. You can go to them, learn everything you need to know of the top people that do it. I know I did a podcast for them, and it was very successful for me, and I really enjoyed sharing sharing my story. I know, Brett, you did a podcast, and it was very, very informative, and, I learn a lot. I learn something in every podcast that I listen to, whether it's real estate related or not. And I know, Brett, your company, Simple Wholesaling, does a podcast every week that I never miss. And
thanks, Dave.
He's getting, you're getting people from all over the country that's not really in our area, but it's the same kind of information that I seek it every day.
Definitely, it's a daily choice, and I think people just kind of they spend so much money on whatever degree they're going to get, whether, like I said, some of these professions, they spend $40,000 as a drop in the bucket, or $100,000 or whatever it is. And literally, to be a professional real estate investor, it's like going to these networking things, CIREIA, which is not a big expense. The value that you bring from it is huge. It's going to pay for itself times 50 years by going to just a couple of these events. And I think that that's why it is so important for one of the first steps is to kind of take that local education. There's like a national education that you can go to, like, Bigger Pockets or some of these websites, but then there's the local education. You can really hear from real people like you, Dave, or, that are really doing it. And I think it's awesome.
I just wanted to add to that, because I think from the perspective of CIREIA, and Dave, you mentioned that there's lots of other options, and that's kind of what we do from the CIREIA perspective, is we really think it makes sense to take a look at all of the resources out there and try to educate yourself as best you can in this process. And I think part of what we do in our group, though, is that networking piece. So there's a lot of people that are getting started in the process in some way, and it really makes sense for them to come talk to somebody and say, how are you doing this, and what are you doing, and how do you get started, what kind of resources do I need? And I think it really exposes you to lots of different ideas and options in terms of real estate investing, and it's a good and inexpensive way to get an idea of what's actually going on out there. So thanks, Dave. And I think what we're going to do next is we're going to get into more detail about what actually happens on a day-to-day basis with Dave, what he does on a weekly basis, what kind of resources are involved, and we're going to dig into some of the detail in just a minute.
Real Talk, Indiana's premier talk show on real estate investing. Brought to you by CIREIA, Central Indiana's oldest and largest real estate investing association.
Welcome back to Real Talk, real estate investing done the right way. And today we're joined by Dave. And Dave, we're going to talk a little bit more about what you're doing. And I know I watch a lot of TV shows. I haven't actually seen yours yet. I'm probably just sleeping when it's on, but just curious to get an idea from you what people's perspectives are when they see those flipping shows on TV versus what reality is. Can you give us some kind of an idea?
Well, I love the TV flipping shows, and my wife says you need to quit watching them because we're spending too much money on these houses. So we battle a little bit about that. Then all of a sudden she says, "Man, that's a pretty good idea. We ought to try that in a house." But you've got to understand that the flipping shows have the same segments on every show that's done. The first segment is they find the house. The second segment is they develop the scope of work that goes into the house. The third or fourth segments, then they fight to keep their houses. Oh my God, we're way over budget. How are we going to make any money on these houses? And then the fourth show, the house turns out perfect and they make a lot of money. Well, we're in Central Indiana. We make the same kinds of returns if we're successful on our flips. It's like if they do a $600,000 flip house in Indianapolis or in California and make $60,000, that's a lot of money. But there's also a lot of perceived risk. I've done 200 flip houses in Central Indiana, and I've done one house over $600,000. And that house in $600,000, I made exactly, I can tell you, $1,143.
That's a really good return, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, if I could do 600 of those.
You're really buttering up whoever's listening right now. Sounds exciting.
So I want them to know it's not all upside. But if we do a flip house in Indianapolis and buy it for $70,000, which is not uncommon, put $30,000 into it and sell it for $125,000 or $130,000, we've made a really good return. We've made a better return than they've made on their TV show, but it's just not the big numbers that you have in Central Indiana. And we get a lot of people that come to us that have total expectations on what they're going to do. I had a broker, I'm affiliated with Century 21 Sheets, and I had a broker call me and just a matter of fact just said, "Hey, Dave, if you have a flip that you're not interested in, my client's looking to spend $200,000, he'd like to sell it for $320 or $330 and make $50,000. And I called him back and I said, "Hey, did you understand what you just asked me?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, you want me to give your stranger, your friend, $50,000 on a flip. I've done 200. I don't make that kind of money on each of these houses. But each of these flip shows, a 30-minute show has 22 minutes worth of content that's on the show, and they're basically laid out the same way to, fight at the end, fight for their profit and realize a profit. But I get a lot of good design ideas, a lot of good floor plan ideas from it. But the one that I see and I get the most enjoyment out of is first-time flippers. Some of the stuff we see in that show is real life. I'm thinking, God, these guys are idiots. How are they ever going to make a profit on that? And they're going to get the house done in 60 days. And we look at it and think, wow, that's a 6-month deal. And at the end of the show, and they says, well, after 6 months, they've decided to try to sell the house as is, or they're going to live in the house. So it becomes a little bit of real life on the flipping show. Even the hour shows, it's 42 minutes of content. But if you pay attention to the show, it's the same every show. It's find its scope of work, fighting and battling for your profit, and that's what we do. We find the house, we do a scope of work, we do a budget, and then we spend the next 2 to 6 months on this specific house just fighting for a profit to get it out. We've got cost overruns. We've got everything that comes into these kinds of these transactions, and that's part of the beauty and the fun of the deal. Every deal, every transaction is different.
So let me ask you then, is there a sweet spot for deal sizes that you're looking for here in Central Indiana? I know it's not California, so we're not looking at, let's buy those $600,000 houses and turn them around, but in Central Indiana, it's a different story, right? So what's kind of the range that you're looking for?
The sweet spot in Indianapolis is the flips we have currently in progress. We're buying at $80,000 to $90,000. We're putting anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 in these houses, and we hope our sale price is in the $170,000 to $180,000 range.
So what do you try to make on a house? So you're doing this full time. You don't have any other side jobs or anything like that. So. And kind of talk to us about that. A normal flipper or rehabber here in Indianapolis, they're flipping houses. What is a good profit? They're putting in 3 to 6 months of work by the time they buy the house and then they sell the house. Is that pretty much an average time frame? And then what's a good profit? What is somebody, if they made this profit, that'd be pretty cool.
Well, and we're pretty transparent with our profits because we work with a lot of investors, so they know what we're making on a house and they have all of our numbers. But if we can get into a $150,000 house, we're probably going to go into that transaction trying to make $30,000 and then literally battling every day to try to save what we can of that $30,000. And if we a lot of times we'll get to 25, a lot of times we'll get to 20, sometimes we'll, it's just like one of the shows, the Flip and Flop. That guy's never on budget. My wife says, that's you're never on budget. So we're battling like anybody else. But, it's a lot of money, but yet it can be a full-time job without doing the number of flips that we're doing. So we're feeding a pretty big animal.
Yeah. Definitely. I want to dive in just kind of back to the shows a little bit because a lot of people watch, and this is a huge production industry. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, there wasn't that many flipping shows. Now it's everywhere, and people love it, and so this whole remodeling houses has just become just a huge fad, kind of people are just kind of getting into, and everybody that watches these shows, they really, really want to do it. But can you take us into what is the difference between remodeling a house? So if I live in my house and I say, hey, I want to put in a new kitchen, my wife says, let's redo the bathroom. What is the difference between doing that and then doing what you do on taking a house and really not looking at, hey, I want to do all this pretty stuff to it, but I actually need to make a profit because this is going to put food on my table? What's the difference between remodeling a house and then rehabbing and flipping a house?
Well, I think the perception on remodeling a house, something that you're living in, you tend to spend a lot more money to do that. Now, we have contractors in place that do a lot of stuff for us. Fairly, people are going to say, "Man, you got that done for that." Well, they make a profit also, but we're doing a volume of work, so sometimes we can get a little bit better price. For instance, if you're remodeling your own kitchen, the couple doesn't appear to be too concerned about the cost of kitchen cabinets. For instance, we have to be very concerned about the cost of kitchen cabinets. On a $200,000 rehab, our budget on most of these houses will be $6,000 for cabinets. And they'll be really nice cabinets, soft closed doors, where the other people will sit down with the designer and design the cabinets. And the cabinets could be 2 or 3 times what we pay for a house. But it's their home, they're going to stay there, and it's going to add to their resale on the house. But the remodeling of a house is you tend to opinionate what you do to the house for your taste. We try to rehab a house to the taste of the public out there today. We know the grays are really big right now. 5 years ago, everything was beige, but now it's grays. The beauty with our cost is, most people want to go with real wood floors in their houses, and real wood floors, going to the top retailers in the city, could be $4 to $9, $10, $11 a foot, where we're putting in what we consider high-end laminate, and you'd be hard-pressed to tell that that's not wood floors. And it saves a lot. It's probably better flooring, more durable, and will withstand the test of time. So we're looking to we don't cut corners at all, but we compromise. And when you're doing your own rehab house that you're going to live in, you tend not to compromise on that house. So something that I do for like a total kitchen with appliances and flooring, I might spend $10 or $11 or $12,000, where that same job with better quality products, but maybe not as good as you think it is. It might cost them $30,000 to do that.
Well, Dave, we have a lot more questions we wanted to ask you and dig into a little bit more detail. We're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back in just a minute.
Real Talk, Indiana's premier talk show on real estate investing. Brought to you by CIREIA, Central Indiana's oldest and largest real estate investing association.
Welcome back. My name is Ron Watson. I'm the board president for CIREIA, and with me today is Brett Snodgrass and Dave Short. And we're talking to Dave today about flipping houses. Dave, I know one of the questions that we often get when we talk to people about flipping houses is the money question. So how much money does it take to get started? What if you're just getting started and you've got a little bit of money maybe in a 401k, IRA, whatever it might be, what are some requirements or ways of kind of getting started without just throwing your whole retirement at it?
Well, we never suggest that the people throw all their retirement at it until they're very comfortable with the situation that they're putting themselves in. We use a lot of IRA money for our flips from investors who want to get better returns than they get in the stock market, even though our president says our returns are pretty good, and they are. So it's great for everybody, but our business gives these people different alternatives for some of their money. But having said that, the money side of it is one of the most important sides of it. The number one most important side of it is the finding the house. It's like if you find a really good flip, the money will follow you. And that's the situation that we kind of look on, and that's kind of the stuff that we get education on. Perfect example, I'm sitting in my office yesterday, and one of our students has a really, really good deal, and all of a sudden his funding has fallen out for the house. He has to close tomorrow, and he don't know how he's going to do that because his money deal fell apart. So I said, okay, I'll look at the house. I don't know if I can take you out of the transaction or not. So I went and looked at the house. It's a very good flip, very good neighborhood. So I say, look, where are you at? We just explained the circumstances, and so I said, I'll buy the deal for you and from you, and I'll close Friday with you. So we're going to bring the funds for him to close his transaction, and that's him being a part of a CIREIA group and networking. He could make the call to save his transactions and still make some money. Our flipping side, we use a lot of joint venture partners in different ways. The be able to attract joint venturing is if you have a little bit of money, then you can bring that money to a seasoned investor and he can structure some sort of transaction for you to do. If you don't have any money and you find the transaction, you can bring it to a seasoned investor and he'll help you structure that transaction so you don't lose it and you can make some money. A little bit of the pie is better than losing all of the pie on it. So the money is out there. There's people really fighting and trying to get decent returns on their money. We're not financial guys. We just know what we do to find the money, and we know what we can pay for the cost of money. But I don't think a newbie coming into our business, he has to be. It's the second probably most important key point. But there's a lot of, in I think 2 weeks, we're going to have a crowdfunding person on our show as a guest, and he's going to tell you how you can get involved in the real estate business for as little as $5,000 with, a very low, for person has very low tolerance. I would rather have the guy that has a lot of money versus the guy that has $5,000 because none of our investors lose money. It's a kind of a quirky statement, but we're structured where they don't lose money. And even if I lose money, they don't lose money. But we have a lot of people that come to us that can't afford to lose any of that money. And if we see that person, our deal has to be structured totally different from what another transaction might be.
That makes sense. And, I know we're going to talk, you mentioned this a second ago, in future episodes more about the money, where you can get money, and I've been amazed as I've been involved with CIREIA, all of the different avenues and resources and options that are out there to actually provide financing for deals, even if you don't have much of your own. But I'm kind of curious. You mentioned one thing I'd like to know more about, which is finding the house. So I know there's got to be some kind of art form to that, or some kind of structure that you're looking for. I know there's lots of houses out there in central Indiana. Where do you start, and what's that process like?
Well, for me, the process is doing networking within the group and doing networking with people that come across these houses. Brett does several deals a month. We'll be talking to him. He's a source for me. My big thing is I want to try to be networking for houses where I'm not going against a lot of other people's for that particular house. One of the examples I had was this week, and it's like, oh my gosh, I get a call or I get an email from a wholesaler, and they said, well, I've got this house in an area that I really, really like. So that was at 2:00. At 2:10, I was sitting in front of that house and say, I want to go in. I really like the house. And I got to talk to you. So, well, I just had a guy buy it sight unseen. So you're kidding me.
Wow.
And
was that us?
So, no, it wasn't you.
Brett did that to you, didn't he?
Sorry, Dave.
But that happens. So, finding the house, we buy a lot of properties from the Marion County Sheriff's sale. We know people that buy a lot from the surplus sale. These are all show topics that we'll eventually address. We buy people that buy from tax sales. I don't buy from tax sales. I don't buy from surplus. Not that it's not a good source. Some of the strategies that we teach people is like search the, MLS is another good source. Find a really good realtor that specializes and deals in REO properties, and you can find a lot of transactions there. So the source of finding a house literally goes on and on and on, and it's a daily process. But being a good flipper is the ability to make a quick decision. This is where people get paralyzed, and it's really, really hard to do, is being able to make a good decision, make that decision quickly. And when somebody calls you on a transaction that may be a really good fit for you, it's like if Brett calls me, he said, Dave, I've got a house in Irvington. It's, ABC 123 Main Street in Irvington, which is a hot spot for me. If he calls me and says it's a really good deal at 1 o'clock, I will probably drop everything that I'm doing because I respect his judgment and look at that house within 30 minutes. What I look at is, okay, if it's a $20 or $30 or $15,000 profit and Brett is willing to put that in my pocket, why wouldn't I react as quick as I possibly can?
Right.
But it's amazing. I know if I've got somebody that's really hot to buy a house, if I call them on a transaction and it's Wednesday and they say, well, I'm going to get by it first thing in the morning Saturday. I said, well, it's too late. That house is already gone. So somebody's willing to put money in their pocket and they don't react quickly. So our business is instantaneous. You have to go in, look at a house, do your due diligence, and have an answer for them within 2 to 3 to 4 hours to do that.
So one thing I've always wondered about as as a maybe a novice, I don't flip houses. I'm more of a landlord. So when I think about somebody like yourself and how many deals you're doing, my first reaction to that is, wow, there are probably none left. And can you address that? I mean, how many people, if you're doing so many deals, I mean, are there always going to be opportunities out there? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, there's always opportunities, and that's one of the reasons that we talked about earlier in the show about the personality, your personality and how you approach deals. There's a lot of flippers that will take deals or houses that I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how can you make any money on that house? But they can, because they have their model that they go to. And sometimes, a person can take a transaction at a smaller margin that I can take because I'm feeding a few more people to do that, where if they're doing the work themselves or the two buddies are getting together to do a house. We've got a couple guys that's real active in CIREIA, and they're doing, it's just those two guys. They're doing a lot of work themselves, and they're actually doing pretty good, and they're what I consider muddling around in the field, but they're going to make some money on the house. So yeah, there's there's enough for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, especially, I just want to chime in on that too. Indianapolis is one of the hottest markets. It's been on lists about the best cash flow markets or flipping markets, and then there's areas in downtown Indy every month that are starting hot, and they're just starting to turn over revitalizing some of these historical areas, and it's pretty awesome. And thanks for doing that, Dave. You're really helping out the city.
Well, I call it, my term is pioneer. And there's a lot of newbie guys trying to get in our business that can be a little bit of a pioneer. I mean, they can buy that $8,000 house or $15,000 house and go into it and create a market. Perfect example for me is Fountain Square. Fountain Square is one of the hottest areas that we've got in Indianapolis. And 4 years ago, I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Now I can't wait to get there.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool. And, just to kind of chime in, and you talked about instant decision making, and I think experience goes a long way with that. And again, just kind of going to the CIREIA networking, talk to us about you have a subgroup or an affiliate group of CIREIA that's been going on for years now, and you teach students. Talk to us about that. What is that like, and what do you teach there?
Well, part of CIREIA is they have asked guys and gals like me to put on monthly meetings anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours to talk about our craft and what we do. And every third Thursday, I do a subgroup called Dinner and Deals with Dave. And I basically take 3 or 4 of our flip projects that we're currently working on and just start to walk through the numbers with the people and our thought processes on how we do it, what our projected profit is, and at the end of that house, when we sell it, we give you all the details, what our return on investment is. So it's a pretty cool deal. Plus, you get a free pizza if you come to my subgroup. But there's 40 to 50 people that come every third Thursday and try to soak up the knowledge of what we're trying to do. But it's a pretty cool group, actually.
So, Dave, we have a few more questions for you. I know Brett and I have been thinking about some ways to put you on the hot seat here in our last segment. So we're going to come back right after another word from our sponsors and wrap up the show.
Real Talk, Indiana's premier talk show on real estate investing. Brought to you by CIREIA, Central Indiana's oldest and largest real estate investing association.
Welcome back. My name is Ron Watson. I'm the board president for CIREIA, and today we have Brett Snodgrass and Dave Short. And Dave, we're getting ready to put you in the hot seat, so we're going to go back and forth with some really important questions for the listeners. And I think the first thing we wanted to get your opinion on is, if you have some money in an IRA sitting in an account somewhere, what should you do with that money, or what could you do with that money to, in terms of flipping, to turn that into some profitable investments?
Well, I think first of all, you make sure that you're comfortable with what you're going in. If you're not comfortable with the people you're doing business with, don't do it. I think Ron made the comment of, if you wouldn't give them your car to drive across country, then probably don't do a real estate deal with them. So, but be comfortable with it, and make sure you as an investor get protected for your money. In our case, we give a first mortgage on all the money that comes into any of our transactions. So if something happens to me, something happens to the transaction, you're going to get paid first before anything's done. It's better we were told, one of our money guys saying that the first thing for an investor is make sure they get their capital back and feel comfortable you get that. A return is a bonus. So you make them feel warm and fuzzy that they're going to get their money back, and you make sure you get the participation with them at a level that you want. Like, I won't, if somebody wants to come to me and say, well, I want my wife to help pick out the colors and do that kind of thing, I'm probably not going to do a transaction with them, because now they're a partner and not an investor. I look for investors, and I make sure the investors is protected with his money, and they get that back before I make a nickel on a house.
Awesome. Next question, Dave. How can you talked about protection, which I think is super crucial in this business, because you have to know who you're working with. What are some other ways that a real estate investor can be protected besides, if we're loaning you money, you put a first mortgage or a lien on the house? What are some other ways that they can go to? Make sure there's no liens on the property. Make sure that everything is done correctly, because in my experience, no deal is better than a bad deal, right? So how can someone get protected with all that stuff? What are some other things they need to do?
Well, be doing business with someone that is protecting his interest as well as your interest. And we do that by using title companies. We have a team that we use that gets involved. It's like, I don't want to touch my investor's money on a purchase. I want to go directly to the title company, because they can now secure the property to protect the investor. But make a good title person a part of the team that you've got here to help protect the investor. And then when you sell the house, the investor is just, he's copied that the house is closing, and the title company will send a release of mortgage on the property, and his money will be wired back to his account. One thing, you need a good person with a equity trust is one of the people that come to mind. There's several other people that handle retirement accounts. And you make sure, and they work to protect you too, that you get the right kind of documentation that your money's secured.
I want to chime in on that just real quick. You talked about these companies, and I use one. They're called Penske Trust Company out of Denver, an equity trust my dad actually uses. And these are different. So if you're listening out there right now and you have money in an IRA or a 401k, basically what we're talking about, there's different options. And when I grew up, and I think when my dad grew up, my parents grew up, there was no other options. You can buy mutual funds, you could buy some stocks, but what other options were there? And I believe that this is a creative strategy that you don't have to flow with the market. Yeah, the stock market's really good right now, but will it be in a year from now? I don't know. You can actually get maybe a fixed rate of return and have some collateral like a house with it that you can actually touch, you can control a little bit more. And I think that's what Dave is talking about, right?
Well, the equity, your retirement account, which is pretty bizarre, can own the house. You don't even own it. And all the income from that house goes straight into your retirement account as a deferred income. So you don't have to pay taxes on it immediately. You take it out at a lower rate at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So, Dave, I have a question for you. You alluded to this briefly, and I know you've been doing this a while, and you know what you're doing. But sometimes the deals don't go as you planned, right? So what types of things can go wrong when you're flipping a house where you can lose some money, and what you've kind of probably got a list of things to avoid now, but can you give
We've only got 3 minutes. That could take about 3 hours. As far
44
as
years of
wrong.
experience.
Yeah,
that's a lot of bad.
We've had a lot of bad things go wrong on houses. So, one of the things that we do once we get in a transaction and the deal starts to go sideways, we notify our investor and say, hey, this isn't going quite like we hoped it would go, but here's what we're doing to take steps to solve the problem. And we're willing to get out of a transaction fairly quickly if we see it going sideways. Our thought process is first loss is the best loss. But we've been able, on the most case, being able to turn a transaction around, maybe not make what we wanted to go in, but we're constantly looking at other people's money and keeping it secure. Other people's money is so much more important than my money on it. And if you're working with a guy that's worried about his money versus you worrying about his money, then that's not necessarily the investor you want to try to do business with.
So let me ask you then, if you're looking at buying houses to flip, does it make sense to focus on a certain area of, let's say, Indianapolis, to become an expert on that area, or does that matter? You're just looking for the terms of the deal, the numbers of the deal. What do you think makes sense?
I've got two pretty good criteria, and a lot of it I'm fortunate with my experience that I look at is, and they're quirky, but they've always worked for me. I want to be in a area that I know I can sell it to an owner-occupant on it, so I stay away from high rental neighborhoods. The other thing is, if I don't feel comfortable in sending my wife down there Saturday night at 6 o'clock to look at that house, then I'm probably not going to buy that house. She says I'm questioning her sometimes on some of that, but for the most part, that's some of the things that's one of the big things that we look at.
So, Dave, we're about to the end of our segment. We've got some really good information from you. Before we let you go, a couple things. I wondered if you have a tip of the week that you can share with our listeners. We want to do this on every show and give you the opportunity to be the first one to do that.
Well, we've talked a lot about it today in several of the answers that I've given, and I think the tip of the day is the networking. You've got to get involved with like-kind people. And CIREIA is where I get that on it. My subgroup is where I get that. In the CIREIA, we have 600 members now, and it's an unbelievable organization. And every meeting, you'll have 250 people that are different stages of rehabbing, flipping, renting, managing. Every expertise is involved and is at that meeting, and with few exceptions, they're all willing to share.
So, Dave, thank you very much for joining us today. And I know people probably have more questions. Maybe they've got a deal that they've been thinking about and they want to see what you think about it. Is there a way that they can reach you and talk to you about that?
Yeah, we're a buyer of houses, and we will give you really good information on the house, and we'll be very transparent with it. I can be reached in my cell, 317-590-4499, or I can be reached through my email, which is dshort at C21Sheets, I'll spell Sheets, SCHEETZ.com. And we're pretty good about returning calls, and we're very good about reaching out to you. So we can get your questions answered.
Thank you, Dave. Really enjoyed spending the time
here.
with you today. I know you're going to be more involved as we go forward in this radio program. And Brett, also wanted to thank you for being part of this today. We're going to catch up with you again very soon. I wanted to say from the CIREIA perspective, please join us at our next meeting on March 1st. We meet at the Broadmoor Country Club, which is about Kessler and Michigan Road. Our speaker will be Bill Knoll, CPA and attorney. He'll be taking us and talking about how to keep more of our money and give less of the money away. Membership in CIREIA includes attending this meeting as well as 12 small subgroup training sessions like Dave Short just mentioned. You also get a free webpage for your properties and much more. You can find out more details about CIREIA at www.cireia.org, that's CIREIA.org, or call our executive director at 317-670-8491. And on our next show, we hope you join us for Brett Snodgrass. We're going to be talking with Brett about his expertise, which is flipping houses and how that's like flipping hamburgers. So we hope to speak with you all again very soon. Thank you very much.